You're listening to the Film File right here on No Barriers Radio, the film show for film geeks by film geeks.
Hello and welcome to the Film File. I'm Andy Meakin, and this week, as regular listeners know, last week Lee announced that he's not been very well over the past few months, and he's now got weeks of treatment ahead of him. So the show is a bit more sporadic at the moment and doesn't necessarily follow the same usual format. I'm sure that all of our regular listeners out there wish Lee well and hope for a speedy recovery, but in the time being, we'll be playing it week by week, Lee joining me if he's available, and if not, I'll be putting together little mini episodes just to give you an update on a few news items that have caught my eye, as well as new reviews of any releases that I've had a chance to check out, alongside a look back at some of the older deep dives that you may have missed. So in this week's show, I've got two new reviews for you. First of all, I've been a lifelong Maiden fan, so I'm going to be talking about the recently released documentary looking back at the history of them, Iron Maiden, Burning Ambition. And of course, I've been talking about it constantly and constantly playing the same sound, but yes, the second Mortal Kombat film, 5 years after the 2021 reboot of the franchise, has finally arrived. Find out what I thought of it later in the show. But before anything else, let's take a quick look at the box office and any news that has caught my eye in the part of the show that we affectionately call the news. So has Mortal Kombat smashed its way to the top of the box office, or is Devil Wears Prada still sashaying itself down the runway and stealing all the attention? Well, Devil Wears Prada 2 held the top spot in the US with 43 million this weekend, Mortal Kombat close behind with 40 million, Michael in third place with 36.5 million, Sheep Detectives in fourth place with 15.9 million, and the Billie Eilish Hit Me Hard and Soft, the tour live in 3D, in fifth place with 7.5 million. Here in the UK, Devil Wears Prada 2 again at the top spot, taking 5.2 million. Michael in second place with just over 5 million. Sheep Detectives in third place with 3.3 million. Billie Eilish Hit Me Hard and Soft in fourth with 1.8 million. And Mortal Kombat 2 having a bit of a slow start in the UK box office with just 1.6 million to take fifth place. Mortal Kombat 2's opening weekend in total worldwide was 63 million. With approximately an 80 million budget, it's not a strong start, but hopefully with the quiet week coming up, it will hold over well. It will need to make approximately 200 million in order to break even and become profitable. Could it be that waiting 5 years for a sequel is a bit too long and people have been put off? Well, given that Devil Wears Prada 2 is now up to 433 million worldwide, and that's been 20 years since the first film, I think that's a bit of a null argument. To find out what I think about that film later in the show. So a few news items that caught my eye this week. First of all, Jason Statham, the Stath, is returning to work with David Ayer after they gave us The Beekeeper and A Working Man for a new action thriller called John Doe. Statham in this film will play an unnamed man with no memory, no past and no name, and only one face he can't forget, that of Eliza. Fragments of his identity start to return. He discovers he was trained for a mission still in motion and is being hunted by the very people who sent him. With enemies closing in on all sides, he must choose between finishing what he started or protecting the one thing that makes him feel human: love. This comes from a script by Zach Penn, who gave us Ready Player One and The Avengers, and it aims to start shooting this September. Anyone who's going, that sounds a bit generic and familiar? Well, yeah, it's a Statham film. What you're expecting. This is just Bourne Identity reskinned. You know what? I'm fine with that. Statham delivers what Statham does, and Ayer generally has a good eye, if we just forget about that Suicide Squad film that we didn't see his final cut. On the complete flip side, over on Disney Plus, there's going to be a new live-action TV series take on the Casper the Friendly Ghost IP. Disney won a 5-way bidding war for the rights to the character. Executive producers Rob Letterman and Hilary Winston are spearheading the project, which is backed by Universal Studios Group. Spielberg is also on board as an executive producer, having executive produced the 1995 film, and specifics about how they're going to approach the property this time are unknown at this point in time, but it is being rumoured to be a modern update on the classic ghost story, and it's in the very early stages of development. Most people are speculating that it will lean into a Wednesday-esque kind of aesthetic, updating, modernising, but trying to stay true to what made the original so beloved. Will this all come to fruition? Well, back in 2022, there was one previous attempt to create a series based on Casper, but that never went anywhere. But with Disney behind it, I'm pretty sure that now that they've got the rights, they will push for it to get out there as quick as possible. More news on that as we start to get it. It's sad news for those like us who've been expecting another Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat, depending on what title you want to use. It turns out that at this point in time, there's no development going on. Now, there's been a lot of back and forth on this news over the past week. The Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt led film only garnered $375 million at the box office on a $175 million budget, but became a huge hit when it finally landed on home release. The last official update we had on this film was back in 2024. Doug Liman had said that he's spending time trying to crack the story, and we knew that Blunt and Cruise were definitely interested in coming back and continuing it. But everything went on hold after Liman and Cruise started working on the underseas film called Deeper, but that film itself stalled in production. Well, this week, Daniel RPK indicated that Warner's had greenlit and were moving forward on Edge of Tomorrow 2, and shooting window was as close as the back end of this year. But that got shot down almost immediately by Collider, who say that their sources have reported that the sequel is not currently in active development and there's no production timeline set at present, adding that the studio still hopes to make the movie in the future and that it's not officially dead, but it's a long way from being alive and active. Who's correct here, Daniel RPK or Collider? You know what? Let's just wait for official news to come out. Yes, we would love to see a sequel to that excellent film. And if you've still not seen Edge of Tomorrow, seriously, go out and buy it, because it is one that you will want to go back and rewatch. A sequel would be well received by all the fan base out there. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that we get more news on this pretty soon. Meanwhile, Eddie Redmayne and Miles Teller are in talks to star in Doug Liman's new spy thriller, Star One. David Coggeshall has penned the script, and the story follows two mismatched CIA agents. The first one daring and charismatic, played by Teller, and the other a straight-laced strategist, Redmayne, who must work together to execute a top-secret mission, a treacherous journey across thousands of miles of enemy territory to covertly deliver arms. Hamnet stars Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley are going to reunite on screen for a film called Hold On To Your Angels, written and directed by Beast of the Southern Wild filmmaker Bain Zeitlin. This film is going to be set on the edge of South Louisiana. The story will follow a hellbound outlaw, played by Mescal, and a ferocious shepherd of lost souls, played by Buckley, who fall in catastrophic love as their crumbling bayou paradise drags them under. Still seeking a distributor, it's getting sold at Cannes. It's expected that on the back of those two stars being involved, this will be snapped up quite rapidly. Alison Williams, who you might remember from Meakin and Get Out, and Michelle Randolph have joined the sci-fi survival film Homewrecker from Xavier Gens, who gave us Under Paris and Lupin. Eliza Bell and Travis Gordon have penned the script for this. Filming is beginning in mid-July in France, and the story will follow three star-crossed Americans suddenly forced to work together to survive in a terrifying, unexplained global event that threatens to destroy life as they know it. Inspirations for this have been said to be coming from films such as A Quiet Place and 10 Cloverfield Lane. Sounds like it's got potential, just don't throw sharks in Paris again. Those of us of a certain generation might remember a TV series from the 80s called Highway to Heaven, which starred Michael Landon as a probationary angel who's sent to Earth to earn his wings by helping people in need. It was one of those story of the week kind of shows. He just goes to a different area to help someone. If you think Quantum Leap, but without the science, but having angels instead, that's what it basically was. Well, Fox has announced a new contemporary reimagining of that series, which will come from writer-producer Jason Katims, who gave us Friday Night Lights, and Amblin Television. Set to premiere during the 2027 to 2028 season. Whether they'll still opt for the story of the week approach remains to be seen, but it's probably more likely that it'll end up being an 8 to 10 episodes with a series arc underlying everything. Scarlett Johansson is set to star in Hereditary and Midsummer director Ari Aster's new film Scapegoat for A24. The plot details are completely unknown at this point in time. Johansson has recently wrapped production on Mike Flanagan's new Exorcist film and is about to start working on Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2 before production can even start on Scapegoat. Meanwhile, Sophie Thatcher has scored dual lead roles in the Babadook and Nightingale filmmaker Jennifer Kent's new sci-fi film, The Girl Who Was Plugged In, which filming for this starts in mid-November in Australia. Kent wrote the screenplay, which is adapted from a 1973 award-winning sci-fi novella by American writer James Tripty Jr. It's a surreal dystopian tale that revolves around a disfigured, suicidal young woman hired by a megatech corporation to virtually operate a beautiful but brainless flesh body called Delphi, whose sole purpose is to influence the masses and sell products. This is cyberpunk dystopia, and I'm all there for it. Oscar winner Brendan Fraser is set to star in the cosmic sci-fi thriller Starman from filmmaker Josh Wakely. Fraser will portray a technologist, Tom Adams, who launches a historic expedition to Mars, but unforeseen events find him millions of miles from Earth, his mission becoming an unexpected and urgent race against time, driven not by survival alone, but by love. I'm always there for a slice of solo sci-fi in perilous situations, and Brendan Fraser is going from strength to strength in recent years. Very excited for this one. And the last bit of quick news, Obsession filmmaker Corey Barker was recently signed up to write and direct a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre film for A24. Speaking with Total Film in recent weeks, he says that his take is going to be quite different from all the other reboots. In his words, I really think that the potential for that series has not been fully realised. I actually feel like a lot of the remakes went the opposite direction than it should have gone. I'm really excited to do a Texas Chainsaw Massacre that's not just about a guy chasing some people around with a chainsaw, that has some heart to it. You care about these characters and you want to see them survive. And it's brutal. As long as it's brutal, I think that's all that the fans will be happy with. Only one trailer that I want to bring to everyone's attention this week. If you haven't checked it out already, go over to YouTube and have a look at the trailer for Apple TV's new adaptation of Cape Fear as a series. And boy, does this look good. Javier Bardem playing the Max Cady role, and Amy Adams playing the lawyer whose family Cady targets as revenge for him being wrongfully imprisoned. Bardem is as menacing as he's ever been on screen, and watching the trailer alone sent chills down my spine, and I can't wait to see how Apple TV deliver this already known story that we've covered in deep dives many moons ago. There's always room for updating it for a new audience and telling the story slightly differently. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that's the news.
You're listening to No Barriers Radio, and you're listening to the FilmFile, the film show for film geeks by film geeks. And if you're enjoying the show, then check out the FilmFile podcast, which you can find quite easily by heading over to your favorite podcast platform, searching for the FilmFile, hitting that subscription button, and leaving a like. More to come on No Barriers Radio, and more to come on the FilmFile. And you can get in touch with us right here at FilmFile HQ by simply
heading over to social media platforms, search for FilmFile UK. You can get in touch with us through there. You can email us, podcast@filmfile.uk. Get in touch with us with any thoughts on films, any films that you want us to deep dive at some point, any films that you disagree with our opinions on. Feel free. We're always open to listen to other sides of the story. And so we come to the deep dive section of the show. Now, with Lee being unavailable, there won't be a new deep dive to look at each week until he's back. I don't like doing things like deep dives without Lee around because it's great to have both our perspectives on the history and the evolution of a film. Instead, what I've done is I've gone back into the archives to grab out a few from the early episodes of the show. And so we're casting our mind back to the year 2021 when we did deep dives into Trainspotting and indeed Trainspotting 2, and also one of my firm favourite films of all time, Borman's Excalibur. Here's what we had to say on those films as their deep dives.
Dive, dive, dive.
Our deep dive for this week is a British piece of iconography. It came out unbelievably in 1996. It changed British cinema. It made big stars out of its director and out of its leading man. It was everywhere and anywhere. It was the cultural icon of its time, Trainspotting, the black comedy directed by Danny Boyle and starring Ewan McGregor.
Choose life. Choose a job. Choose a career. Choose a family. Choose a big television.
You're a quiet, sensitive type. A little bit crazy, a little bit bad.
Choose washing machines, cars, compact displays, and dental insurance.
You lied on your application.
merely to get my foot in the door.
What exactly attracts you to the leisure industry?
I don't want pleasure. Like my pleasure and other people's leisure.
Choose sitting on that couch watching mind-numbing, spirit-crushing game shows, stuffing junk food into your mouth. Choose leisure wear and matching luggage. Choose good health and a career. Choose your friends. Choose your future. Choose life.
Where to start with Trainspotting? It was released to critical acclaim, had some backlash even from the government. It's regarded as one of the best British films of the 90s. And in 2004, it was voted the best Scottish film of all time. But I don't know what it was competing against. And also there was a sequel, T2, Trainspotting, which was released in January 2017. Trainspotting, when it came out, was everywhere. MTV, because it had the Iggy Pop music video. The style of the poster became a part of the Britpop movement and became that cool Britannia. It was young, it was hip, it was dynamic. We'd never seen anything like it. It was a film of its time, but it's a film that you look back and you still think fabulous. Or do you? Or do you, Andy Meakin?
Yes, you certainly do. I revisited both Trainspotting and Trainspotting 2 this past week and loved them all over again. The first film, adapted from the novel by Irvine Welsh, is a look at a disenfranchised group of 20-somethings who inhabit the world of drug addiction. The film tapped, as you hinted at, perfectly into that era's consciousness of the 90s, even before it released, thanks to an impactful marketing campaign, which saw character posters emblazoned on phone booths, bus stops, any spare space in Sheffield city centre. You saw a character poster, Renton, Diane, Begbie, with the Trainspotting down the side, and then arrival date, and that was the release date. You knew from seeing those posters that this was going to be something different. This was something that stands out. You didn't recognise any of the cast, except maybe Robert Carlyle, who was gaining a bit of publicity thanks to his TV roles at that point in time. But Ewan McGregor was pretty much an unknown. And there was also a series of poster images, such as Ewan McGregor climbing out of a toilet, or the infamous Choose Life philosophy, that spoke to folk of a certain age group. And suffice to say, at the age of 23, when the film came out, I was that target age group. I'd flunked university. I was scratching a living on minimum wage in a dead-end job. I clung to nightclubs and drinking, and perhaps a smoke or two to give my existence some meaning, and Trainspotting spoke to me. Even though I had never been deep into hard narcotics, I'd like to state that here, I've never been down the junkie route, but the culture that it reflected was the culture that I could see around me. McGregor had worked with Danny Boyle on Shallow Grave beforehand. Even though that was a great film, it was Trainspotting that really put him on the map and made him the star that he is today. As the lead voice in the film, Renton, he's the narrator taking us through this world that is exciting, dangerous, melancholy. He goes through the highs, the lows, the overdoses and more in a very breezy, and I forgot, it's a breezy 90 minutes runtime.
Wow, you see, I'd forgotten that element to it.
To get so much of the story, because anyone who's read the book, and I've read the book a few times, will know that it's quite a complex book, and it's quite a hard book to read because it is all told in the tone of voice of each of the characters of the story, including the accent.
Yeah, it's got a kind of almost a Clockwork Orangey type way in that there's a certain language to it.
So it was always considered like to be a hard book to adapt to film, but Boyle managed to bring it perfectly to screen. And bearing in mind this was Boyle's second film outing, he put a mark on cinema overall with his style.
I remember it being sold at the time, and it had that same kind of coolness that, well, say Pulp Fiction had, and I know McDonald, one of the producers, tried to sell it that way, especially in the States market. But it did have a cool quality to it. I mean, it had an amazing cast of people who've now gone on to other things all over the place. I mean, Ewan McGregor we talked about. Ewan Bremner is a character actor. Johnny Lee Miller went straight over to Hollywood. Robert Carlyle, as you said. Kelly MacDonald, who's done amazingly well and has just come off our screens with Line of Duty. So it had a fantastic young cast who gave it their all. It was almost like this is going to be the last film that we're ever in, so we'll just be spot on perfect. Then, of course, it launched as any successful British film does, this hope that we were going to have a new reign of British movie making. And a lot of films did follow off the back end of Trainspotting that had a certain influence from it, but nothing did it in the way that Trainspotting did. It hit the nerve exactly at the right time, with exactly the right marketing, with exactly the right budget, and with exactly the right cast. Everything is the perfect storm for this one to be released in. While other films, even other films based around the author's other works, just didn't connect. You can say almost the same thing of what happened with Tarantino when Tarantino came out. You got a lot of subpar Tarantino-esque films with the occasional good ones that stand out. But it was a moment in time that captured that particular period, that captured that enthusiasm for the whole cool Britannia feel that was going off. You had the rise in Britpop and British music. It was cool to be British. You got the Blair government coming in around the same time. Everything about that was the perfect storm. And it's a film that I've seen many, many times, and is highly, highly quotable. And it's just the perfect snapshot of that particular period. And when you think back to 1996, as I said before, the timing was absolutely spot on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun, genuinely funny. Every time I rewatch it, I forget how genuinely belly laugh funny some of the moments are. It's emotional, it's sharply scripted, it's stylish. Boyle's direction, coupled with Brian Tofano's cinematography, give a unique visual feel with fantastical and sometimes sickening and harrowing images to draw us into the drug-fueled world of Renton and his mates. But it's the music as well. You've already said, like, the cast, everything was perfect, but the music is so perfectly placed. This film has some of the best needle drops ever committed to film that you can get.
So yeah, when the film was released, it sparked controversy all over the place. I remember watching on TV a government minister talking about it glorifying drug abuse. It turns out that she'd never seen the film. And Andrew MacDonald responded to those claims, saying we were determined to show why people took drugs. And you had to show that it was fun and also that it was awful. And the music and humor that makes people feel that it glamorizes drugs. But there is the terrible downside. There's the withdrawal scene. It doesn't glamorize it, but it glamorizes being youthful. And that's why the film sticks.
By the close of Trainspotting, it was one of those films that, even though it told so much story, you got to the end and you thought, oh, I want to know what happened to these people next. Because you fell in love with the characters. The characters felt so real. You wanted to know, where did Renton go at the end? What happened to Begbie? What happened to Spud? What happened to Sick Boy? Did Renton get back with Diane or what? And answers to those initially came via the follow-up novel Porno, but for the film incarnations would arrive 20 years later, as you've said, when T2, Trainspotting, got released. I remember reading an interview in the early part of the 2000s with Danny Boyle, when he was asked, was he going to look at doing a sequel to Trainspotting? And he said that he'd love to do it, and he'd love to set it like 10, 15 years after the first film. But I'm not going to use his exact word, but he called them some unquotable names. All refused to get old. And he was basically referring to the fact that all of his cast from this film didn't age. You look at them and you just go, yeah, you can't play someone 15 years on when you only look 2 days on from when you were in the film. So he wanted to wait until they looked like they'd grown up a bit and to be able to give a reason to tap back into their lives. And when T2 came out, it got a very mixed reaction from people who were expecting one kind of film because it delivered something completely different to what Trainspotting was.
It did. I mean, to get there, as you've said, Ewan McGregor had to, buddy up to Danny Boyle. They'd fallen out over casting decisions for The Beach. It didn't look for a long time that they would ever work together, and they needed to. They needed to resolve those differences, and they did. And they held meetings saying, they would work together again, and they did. I like Trainspotting too. Now, I like it, but I don't go back to it. I enjoyed the movie that I saw. It didn't disgrace the original, but what it lacked was that urgency. Again, because that urgency was made by people in their 20s, and now people in their 40s upwards don't have that sense of urgency. that was in 1996. So there's a lot of elements that I did. I like the fact that it took a different route. It dealt with middle-aged. It dealt with the fact of having been somebody and what that means, and the legacy of having been somebody, and what you're going to do for the future when the future still, even in your later years, can be uncertain. There was lots and lots of elements that I liked about it, but it didn't have, and this was always going to be the problem with T2, it didn't have that knockout effect that the original Trainspotting did. It's a very good film with a great cast that talks about some interesting ideas. And while not strictly an adaptation of porno, it does have a lot to say. And it has a lot to say for the generation who've grown up since then.
Yeah, the original film in the 90s reflected the mindset of the mid-20s youth, lost for direction, trying to find themselves. T2 reflected the mindset of your late 40s, you're approaching middle age, reflecting on missed opportunities, past mistakes. And again, I was the age group perfectly placed for that film. I'd got to that stage in my life where I kind of had a direction, but I wasn't sure if I was going in the right direction. And as you know well, is only a year later, I moved on from where I was stable in an employment and took a risk and moved on to something else, because I was at that age where I was questioning things, where I was starting to wonder, was this what I wanted to do with my life? T2 tapped into me completely. And rewatching it, you say that it's not one that you go back to, and it wasn't for me until this week when I rewatched it and I suddenly got it all over again. And now I think it's going to be constantly, whenever I revisit Trainspotting, I'm going to go straight onto T2 straight afterwards, because I think they bookend each other beautifully. What I found interesting with T2 is that it made me look back at the character of Spud a lot more, because in the first film, he was a very slight character, he was comic relief, but he was a bit of a pitiful character. But you now see that he was the actual heart of that group that held them together.
Yeah,
because T2 focused a lot on how he never got out of that drug addiction. Without Renton there, he fell apart, and with him falling apart, the whole group dissipated. But he is the character that each of the group seemed to still relate to in one way or the other. Absolutely marvellous to see how that character got really developed and grew over T2. The pair of films are held in high regard for me due to their direct connectivity to my own life, but they are just both great examples of taking themes of the time and representing them in a stylish manner on screen. And I think it's a testament to Danny Boyle's directorial career that he more or less started with one of them, and is like one of his most recent is the other one, and they both reflect completely different tones. Absolutely marvelous films.
There's always been discussion of a third Trainspotting film. It was suggested from a story by Irving Welsh, the Blade artist, that there might be a spin-off centered around the character of Begbie. Irving Welsh has also hinted that a Trainspotting television series is possible. I think it's time to put those characters to bed and leave them in your memory. But what a memory, and what a great pair of films, but what an utterly defining film of an era.
Hear, hear.
This week's Deep Dive is a deep dive into the 1981 John Boorman epic, and I don't use the word lightly, but epic medieval fantasy, Excalibur.
A wizard's ancient spell.
Into the eyes of the dragon and the despair.
And the lust of a lord.
I must have her.
One night with her.
Give birth to an empire.
Behold, the sword of power, Excalibur.
The future has taken root in the present. It is done.
One man, one king.
Orion Pictures presents John Boorman's Excalibur.
Knights of the Round Table, we shall always come together in a circle to hear and tell of deeds good and brave. And I will marry.
So Excalibur, co-written, produced and directed by John Boorman, retells the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And it's based on the 15th century Arthurian romance Le Morte d'Arthur. It starred Nigel Terry as Arthur, Nicole Williams in an amazing turn as Merlin, Nicholas Clay as Lancelot, Sherry Lungi as Guinevere, Helen Mirren as Morgana, a young Liam Neeson as Gawain, Gabriel Byrne as Uther. The casting goes on with Patrick Stewart, a young Patrick Stewart, also making an appearance. The film is, of course, named after the legendary sword of King Arthur that features prominently in all Arthurian legend. And I know for Andy, this is one of his favourite films of all time.
Yes, this is a 5-star film for me. When I rewatched it this week, I rated it 5 stars again. I first caught this film at what was possibly too young an age for what was essentially, well, it was a double A when it got released in the UK, which is the equivalent to a 15. I must have been around 10 when this was rented out on VHS for me. I already had a fascination with the myth and legend of King Arthur. I'd gone to the library and gone through their whole shelf of Arthurian tales, be it fictional things inspired by, or the basis of the myth, the basis of the legend, the possible histories. I loved it. So when this film came out, that's why it was rented for me, because my mum knew it was about King Arthur. So let's get it for him. It's a double A. Oh, he should be okay with it. Oh, were they in for a shock? It's a very gritty, it's a very adult take on Arthurian legend, and it does some nips and tucks to the story. It changes a few things. The sword in the stone in here is Excalibur, whereas in the actual Arthurian legend it wasn't. The sword in the stone was a different sword. But it also takes inspiration from other similar myths and legends like Tristan and Isolde. But it combines it all together. Every kind of mythical, heroic knight kind of tale has been combined into a beautiful 2 hours 20 movie that absolutely captivated me as a youngster, absolutely drew me in. And it became something that I regularly went back to rewatch. I would constantly ask, could we get it out from the video shop again, until it came on TV and I managed to record a copy. And I've stuck with it throughout my life. And it's a film that I go back to at least once every 4 years and still love it. And it was this week that I went back and rewatched it, and I just fell in love with it again. You mentioned the casting. The casting of Merlin was the very first thing that struck me as a child watching this. Merlin, up until that point in my head, he was long beard and pointy hat. You know, from the Sword in the Stone, the Disney animation.
Yeah, the Disney Sword in the Stone version was always kind of the image you had as Merlin, and the casting of Nicole Williamson was absolutely superb. He brought a right sense of humour to the role, and really, and this is where the film succeeds for me. He's made it the definitive version of Merlin in my head.
Yes, I mean, we had a robed figure with a silver headpiece. He was eccentric, witty, mysterious, devious, and also he wasn't necessarily good. And that was the key thing. He was a manipulator. He was there to try to keep balance between good and bad, or as represented here by the dark magics and the power of the dragon. And he was magnificent in the part. He absolutely stole any moment he's in. And I know that some people, they say that the film suffers when he's not on screen. And I can kind of see that, because he was such a staggering role. His influence on the representations of Merlin throughout the years since has been seen pretty much every time someone's gone for a different kind of approach to Merlin, added a bit more jokiness into it, because he made it so iconic. It would made it a hard bar for future incarnations over my life to live up to, even though things like the BBC TV series of Merlin, quite enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, Boorman had planned a film adaptation of the Merlin legend way back into the 1960s. He'd submitted a 3-hour script with Roscoe Pallenberg, which got turned down. He was offered Lord of the Rings, which at one point was to feature the Beatles. But Boorman persisted. He shopped this around. No studio would commit to it. And it was probably important that much of the imagery that he came up with and the set design was created for his original version of Lord of the Rings. I like this film an awful lot. I don't love it. I think there are some problems within the storytelling which make it very difficult for me. And there's one key sequence in particular, which is when I was taught screenwriting, this scene always came up. But I don't want to bore you with that. What I do think it is, as much as I mentioned Nicole Williamson's definitive version of of playing Merlin. It is always in my head the definitive version of Excalibur. And we've seen that it has that legacy when other King Arthur legends crop up every now and then. I'm looking at the recent version, or should I say, I'm not. And even though I don't love it, and I think of it as a film that I admire, you cannot ignore the grand scope and epic quality to this film, because Boorman makes you feel it and makes you feel as though you're part of this drama. And it's got just an amazing visual style and a lot of scope. And to some extent, I think this was Boorman's last really big studio picture before he started to do things that were more heartfelt, like Hope and Glory, for instance. But as I said, I don't have the love for it that you do, but what I do is I admire it tremendously.
This is a film that benefits a lot from high definition releases of modern day, because watching this on TV back in the VHS days, the detail that I've seen watching it this week was lost. Camelot is described as being made of gold and silver. Yes, the brickwork is painted over silver and gold, so it absolutely matches it. The detail on the armor, I love the designs of the armor. Everything's got a unique design to it. But what I like most about this film overall, when it comes to portraying knights and their battles, is it's no longer this daring do of mythical knights who are perfect swordsmen. It's clumsy, brutal battles in mud, sullying their shining armor and falling over and ending up drowning. It's dirty fighting as it should be. The only part of the film that I feel kind of suffers is the search for the Grail aspect. I think that's the point in the film that it kind of feels a tad clunky. Yeah. And I think it's more because of what we don't see than what we do. And I did read a few years ago that there was approximately 35 to 40 minutes of edits that were made and cut things out. And I suspect a lot of that was around this element that just feels to start, go find the Grail. And then we just find, everyone's dead now, except for you, and you found it. Well, what happened? And that's what lets it down for me. But I can see past that and still love the film overall. It's a definitive King Arthur tale, like you've said. It's not as definitive as it could be. And I think if someone can get it right, we could get an even more definitive Arthurian legend tale. I think it would need to be a TV series in order to actually give it a time to flow and do it all. But I need to do a quick mention to the music as well. The original score by Trevor Jones was really good, but the use of classical pieces such as O Fortuna from Carl Orff served the film so well. I mean, but it adds atmosphere. It gives it that depth of character to the whole environment. When they're riding to the battle to O Fortuna, you can't help but just be like, and rallied along with them. I love this film, in case you can't tell, and I will happily rewatch this over and over again.
It's certainly a film of its time, and it's a film in which it's kind of the end of an era for that kind of filmmaking, when you had a director like Boorman who could go out and make the sort of film that he wanted to make. It sits really as a period piece. It's got everything that works well for Boorman. It's got that internal logic that's right. It's got that hypnotic quality. It's got that huge scale. It misses some of the dramatic intensity that it deserved, and maybe that's the cut that we got. Sometimes it gets a little bit silly, and again, that is sometimes what Boorman has a tendency to stray into. He's not always been successful with his storytelling, but it is a truly inspiring take on the Arthurian legend. And as we've both said, still to this day, I think it is the definitive King Arthur movie and Merlin movie. Interestingly enough, it's Zack Snyder's favourite film and inspired him probably more than anything else.
Which is why he's also looking at creating his own King Arthur project, because this was the film that inspired him, basically, as a youngster, to go into making movies. So that's why I'm excited about Zack Snyder maybe tackling King Arthur, because I'm hoping that the influence of this film will channel through that. If you've never watched Excalibur, when you watch it, be prepared to be constantly pointing at the screen going, that's it, because Liam Neeson, very young Liam Neeson, Patrick Stewart, Gabriel Byrne, Helen Mirren, Sherry Lungi, some marvellous spot the people moments. And Patrick Stewart is brilliantly overplaying his role, which kind of fits for the bravado and gusto of Leon de Grance. When his very first scene, when he attempts to pull the sword from the stone, I don't know whether it's intentionally or unintentionally hilarious, but I found myself chuckling because he's just like, no, marvelous overacting, but fits it so beautifully. Thoroughly recommend this film.
It's quite interesting. I don't know if you knew that Helen Mirren and Nicole Williamson weren't particularly good friends, and they'd had some animosity due to a stage production. I think it was Macbeth, and Boorman makes that work for them on screen because they have that animosity within the scenes that they play, and it's just one of those elements that really ticks the boxes. As I said, not a film that I love. I know that Andy does. A film that I admire, but it's a film that is well worth watching if you are into the Arthurian legend. As I said, for me, it's the definitive version so far.
And now it's time for the reviews. And before we get on to the 2 new reviews this week, I want to cast my mind back to last year, when a film came out about a musical artist, didn't get the attention that it deserved. With it in recent months landing on streaming services to check out, maybe it's time that you checked out Why I Loved a Better Man.
Remember, this might feel good, but this is what matters.
I'm just giving the people what they want.
She offers me protection.
This is it!
A lot of love and affection.
I believe in you.
I'm loving angels instead.
Better Man.
When a biopic of Robbie Williams was first announced, it did nothing to grab my attention. I can take or leave the music of the former Take That star, with only an interest in a small number of his tracks over the years, and so a straight-up biopic was clearly not aiming itself at me. However, all that changed when all the talk started about how it was going to play was revealed, with Robbie being portrayed by a CGI primate. Thinking this was some kind of joke, once the trailer landed and it became clear that they were serious, I found myself intrigued. It also helped that the trailer was infused with an energy to it that was enticing, and it swiftly won me over. Having a wife who's a big fan of the singer, it was inevitable that she would want to watch this. But now, thankfully, I wouldn't be getting dragged along against my will. Directed by Michael Gracie, who gave us the infectiously fun musical The Greatest Showman, and who's also dabbled in real-life musician material through his Pink All I Know So Far documentary in 2021. Better Man is a wild ride of a film that takes us on a chaotic and frenzied journey through the rise, fall, disgrace, and revival of Williams. The bad boy of Take That. It showcases the early life of the star, starting from his humble beginnings as a kid in Stoke-on-Trent, who saw his father exit his life early on seeking fame himself. The removal of a father figure in his life, who the young lad had idolised, and who had imbued a passion for the music of music hall greats such as Sinatra, hit the youngster hard, and it led him to try to prove himself to his absent father. Circumstance led him to audition for a new boy band, where despite an awkward talent musically, it was his cheeky charm that secured him a place within the membership of Take That. However, troubled youth and sudden fame can be harsh bedfellows, and Williams's life spiralled into patterns of addiction and conflict with those close to him. This is a biopic that isn't afraid of confronting the worst of the subject matter, and it doesn't always portray Williams in a glorified light. Instead, it really shows him as the ego-fueled addict that he was for the better part of the film, before the latter half follows his journey of redemption in struggling to become, well, a better man. All of this is made much more impactful and indeed emotional, given that Robbie himself is telling this story, and this is where the part of the genius of substituting him for a CGI ape plays so perfectly. The ape lead is amazingly rendered, with John O'Davis providing the mocap performance with all the swagger that Robbie himself demonstrated over his career. Within the first few scenes, you start to no longer see the ape, but you see a living, breathing character's life playing out, with Williams giving a warts and all account of his life and providing the voice of his own character on screen. This doesn't feel as sanitised as biopics such as Bohemian Rhapsody, where the darker moments were kind of brushed aside, leaving it as an empty bit of fan service. Instead, in Better Man, we get a moving and honest and brutally raw account of a very complicated artist, with a raw depth of emotion sure to make a few eyes well up at points. The music of the star, and indeed Take That, is utilised in creative ways. One particular sequence stands out as a pure, comical, chaotic treat, flashing through the early rise of Take That as Robbie belts out Rock DJ, with the group moving through the London streets and drawing crowds. It's a moment that really shows off the creativity and direction that Gracie can offer. Better Man is a fascinatingly unique approach to telling a biopic that on paper should be too bizarre to work, but it defies expectations to deliver something the fans of the subject will adore, but not to the detriment of the non-fans, who should hopefully find enough energy, emotion and drama within it to embrace the end result. What could have been a pandering bit of biopic gloss like Bohemian Rhapsody instead lifts to be something closer to a rags to riches drama with highs, lows, fantastical musical numbers, and, like Robbie Williams himself, ends up being much more than the sum of its parts. And now it's time for a couple of new reviews. First up, let's take a look at Iron Maiden Burning Ambition.
What an amazing thing this is. If you're an Iron Maiden fan, you're part of one family, my friends.
Gods of metal.
We were playing locally around East London. It started to snowball for us. We were picking up fans the first gigs we did.
Whenever I see a Maiden shirt out in the wild, throw you the horns.
Any long career is going to have ups and downs, and you just kind of ride with it.
Steve had this vision. If you interfered with that vision, you were not going to stay with this band.
Paul Di'Anno was the first singer of the band.
But he wasn't really looking after himself.
Hello there. That's right, it's Bruce.
Bruce was just the piece of the puzzle.
It's like you're watching Broadway.
Think of a more recognizable mascot than Eddie and Iron Maiden.
It just kept getting bigger.
We didn't realise just what a toll it would take.
A bruising few years.
No more!
We're going to go outside and have a fist fight.
I thought of packing it in completely.
Bruce in his box.
The press were saying Maiden are dead. We have grunge.
And he said, I've got throat cancer. It's my brother. He could die.
We were just up against it. And I like that. That's a challenge.
It was always about the fans.
Just with you through thick and thin.
This group created its own universe.
They belong together.
Iron Maiden hit rock bottom in order to become the greatest band in the world a second time.
We are all blood brothers!
Over their 5 decades in the world of heavy metal, Iron Maiden have defied expectations at the start when radio stations wouldn't play them, built up a following not just in their homeland of the UK, but internationally, playing to sold-out arenas worldwide and being immediately recognisable from the logo, from the band, and indeed from their mascot, Eddie, to everyone, even if you're not a fan of their music. This documentary, to celebrate the history of the band, works through the eras of the band, from the start, through to the Bruce Dickinson era, through the Blaze Bayley era, then back to the Bruce Dickinson era, talking about the journey that the band have taken. The band themselves provide voiceover as they talk through all the era of the band's development. And there's also talking head sections with various members of the crew who work with the band, journalists, and even a few celebrity faces, both within the music industry, like Lars Ulrich, or celebrities who just have a love for the band, like Javier Bardem. Running at just under 2 hours, how do you fit the history of a band such as Maiden into that 2 hours? The answer is very lightly. This is a surface-level documentary, and as a huge Iron Maiden fan, there is absolutely nothing in this journey and history that I didn't already know. From those early years with Paul Di'Anno leading the band and Clive Burr on drums, through the mid-80s with the constant run of success when Bruce Dickinson joined the band, to the Blaze Bayley years after Dickinson stepped away to do solo materials, and then the return of Bruce and Adrian Smith to what we have today. All the known details are covered well enough, but not in any depth. Each one of the eras of Maiden could have been a 2-hour documentary in and of itself. And indeed, in a couple of weeks' time, I'll get a chance to see the Paul Di'Anno documentary, which will cover his life and his history with the band, along with his solo career afterwards. But what this documentary smartly does is it knows that it hasn't got enough time to tell the full, detailed story of the band. So what it tells instead is what the band means to the people involved in it, and also to the community of fans who have grown with the music and love the band. Be you an old school Iron Maiden fan since day one, like myself, or be you a new one who's only come on board in recent years. This is a celebration of what Iron Maiden means to not only those directly involved, but the fandom, the community, the family of fans around the world, for whom the band spoke to and brought together. Indeed, going to an Iron Maiden gig always feels the most warming, accepting of places. Out of all gigs that I've gone to, they're always the ones that I feel most at home. Iron Maiden is more than a band, and that's what this film makes clear. They are a sense of belonging, and the documentary really captures that spirit from start to finish, with a wealth of archive materials playing out as the band off camera, which according to Harris is because they're not as good looking as they used to be. Crew and fans all talking about what each period of that history meant to them, interspersed with the occasional wonderful animation depicting the member of the band who in many ways means the most to the fans, Eddie himself. This documentary is a must-watch for fans who will no doubt be tapping along to the music, playing air guitar in the air, or crashing invisible drum kits at various moments, especially over the end credits when we see some of those speakers from the film doing exactly that. If you've never been a fan of Maiden, there might be very little for you to get from this, although you will get a sense of the history of the band and what they mean to the fans. But if you're a fan of Maiden, this is a 5-star piece of gold. Up the irons. Before we get on to my next new release, let's take a quick look back to 2021 when the first Mortal Kombat film came out, to see what I thought of that one at the time. This was a film made with me in mind, and that is...
Mortal Kombat has begun.
We need to fight before it's too late.
There's a war coming. Get over here! I am Sub-Zero. Mortal Kombat.
Now, this film is out everywhere except for the UK, seemingly, where it's all fallen silent on the planned release date. Maybe it's waiting for cinemas to open and going to drop into there, but everywhere else in the world, this has landed. Mortal Kombat is drawn from the popular game series, and it knows exactly who its target audience is. The core story to draw us into this world is the eternal rivalry between the Lin Kuei, the faction which Sub-Zero fights for, and the Shinrai Ryu ninja clan, Scorpion's faction. Opens in 17th century Japan, we see the Lin Kuei attack and massacre Hanzo Hasashi and his family. Hanzo, as he dies, is pulled into the netherworld. Lord Raiden, the god of lightning, arrives to save the life of Hanzo's child. Cut to present day, and a former mixed martial arts champion named Cole is attacked by Sub-Zero and ends up recruited by Sonya Blade and Jax, human resistance warriors who know about other worlds in other dimensions, and an eternal tournament that threatens to subdue Earth to the Netherrealm. Shang Tsung, the leader of the Netherworld armies, plans to defeat Earth's champions before the tournament can begin and sends his minions to destroy them. Yes, this is utter nonsense.
I'm glad you said that, Andy, because I was about to.
If you're not a fan of the game series and you're not already embedded in the lore of the games, it's quite easy to dismiss this film as just throwaway junk. But this is a film that knows its audience, like I said, and it plays strongly to that audience. It throws in characters such as Melina, Goro, and a love him or hate him Kano. I absolutely love him. He's played brilliantly in here, and he's hilarious. As well as lesser-known characters such as Kabal and Kung Lao. And it lets them fight in brutal glory, with some added fatalities for good measure. It is bloody, it is brutal, it is funny, it looks great, the fights are effective, the gore shocks in the right way, and the music sells the rest. As a fan of the series, yes, I loved it, but I can completely understand when other people watch it and go, what have I just seen? For me, this sits comfortably alongside my beloved Anderson film, the first Mortal Kombat film. And I can see this being another one that I return to year on year and love for what it's doing. It's dumb. It's fun. It's Godzilla versus Kong aspect of don't focus on the characters or the plot, just watch the spectacle. Albeit, this time we get holes getting punched through people, hearts getting squeezed, blood, gore, guts, the lot. It's Mortal Kombat. It's what I wanted. It delivered. Moving away from that, over to another one of my huge loves, and that is... Mortal Kombat! Yes, Mortal Kombat 2 dropped at cinemas. I got a chance to see it.
Mortal Kombat is upon us. Get over here! Johnny Cage, the gods chose you to fight.
Well, easy, all right.
I'm an actor. I can't do this. It's time to become the hero you were meant to be.
Mortal Kombat 2.
The 2021 Mortal Kombat film was a lot of fun. It lent into the lore and tone of the games, delivering fights, fatalities, and bloody moments galore. However, it had one small problem in the guise of the lead protagonist, Cole, a totally new character that wasn't from the games and whose special power move actually turned out to be literal plot armor. The inclusion of a new character when there's a wealth of characters that they could have drawn upon instead was very bizarre. And to be honest, he wasn't even interesting enough to make us care for him. Clearly listening to the audience and fan feedback from that first film, this film smartly sidelines Cole and focuses instead on two game character favourites, Johnny Cage, here played by Karl Urban, and Kitana, played by Adeline Rudolph. Plot-wise, this is as basic as you can get. Outworld, led by Emperor Shao Kahn, has been conquering realms by way of the Mortal Kombat tournaments. Earthrealm is facing its 10th tournament, and if their champions lose, then Earth itself will fall to the might of Shao Kahn's army. A handful of champions are chosen by the gods to represent the best that humanity can offer, one of which is Johnny Cage, a washed-up martial arts actor who reluctantly takes the opportunity to be something important again. Throw in a subplot about an amulet that needs to be destroyed, and that's pretty much the loosest story to hang almost 2 hours of fights and witty lines on. If you're looking for something with deep and meaningful insight into the heart of man, you're clearly in the wrong auditorium. This is pure, dumb fun. It knows, just like the 1995 film did, exactly what it is, and it simply runs with it. With the tournament structure lent into this time, the film pretty much plays out like the game for the most part, before the last act switch to the amulet subplot as Earth's champions fight to defend their realm. Urban's Cage is well utilised, offering quippy dialogue that garners laughs early on, and then when Kano, played by Josh Lawson, returns to the screens, he piles on the laughs even more, stealing moments the same way that he did in the first film. Around that pair, the more serious characters embroiled in the film are drawn from the games in abundance, and there's a few nice surprises and cameos for fans that haven't been revealed in the trailers. As for Cole, yeah, he is part of the Defenders here, but he's pretty much relegated to a background character, giving Lewis Tam very little to do. He does, however, get a chance to stand out in one moment, which will have some fans cheering. That, in general, is what this film is doing so well. It presents fan-pleasing moments, knowing exactly who the target audience is. Mortal Kombat 2 is pure blockbuster fun that never tries to be anything other than that, and it's clearly made with the fans of the games in mind. As the end credits start to roll, we're treated to a new 2026 remix of the Mortal Kombat theme tune, aka Techno Syndrome, and I was certainly sat at that point with a beaming smile on my face, hoping that it won't be another 5 years before we get another entry in the franchise. The final moments of this film cheesily set up for a sequel. Whilst I'll still have a lot more love for the 1995 film, most of that is through nostalgia glasses, let's be honest. This film is a very close second in my heart. Mortal Kombat is back, baby, and boy, is it delivering a fatality. So that's what's out this week. Taking a look at the releases coming out in the next week. At cinemas, we've got Northern Soul Still Burning, Obsession, Normal, The Christophers, Top Gun Maverick gets its reissue to run alongside the reissue of Top Gun itself. Shrek is getting a reissue, and Space Jam also gets a reissue, celebrating its 30th anniversary. Yes, people, Space Jam is 30 years old. Over on Now TV and Sky, if you didn't see it at the cinemas, and looking at the box office figures for this, most of you didn't, you've now got a chance to check out The Running Man. We Bury the Dead also lands on Now TV and Sky this week, and Across the Desert. Meanwhile, over on Disney+, Punisher has his one-shot special, One Last Kill. Maybe we'll find out what he was doing while Daredevil was trying to take down the Kingpin. Who knows? And that's the show done for this week. Thank you once again for listening. We'll be back soon with another Film File. In the meantime, just keep sending that love over to Lee and the hopes for a speedy recovery. If you want to get in touch, you can do so via social media. Just search for Film File UK. You'll find us on most social media. Or you can email me directly, podcast@filmfile.uk. Stay safe, people, and remember, watch more films.